Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome to Newark. Welcome to Newark Public Library.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you as well.
Let's start off the conversation talking about you as an artist.
Yes.
So you are a dancer, correct?
Yes.
And a choreographer.
Mostly a dancer. I've made some
Yeah.
attempts at choreography, not so successful.
Well,
So more of a dancer.
Okay. And a teaching artist.
Yes.
Which is an artist in and of itself, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Was your first introduction to the arts, or your first institutional introduction, was it dance or was there anything else?
Actually, it was the visual arts.
Okay.
And it's interesting because Jeremy Johnson had a similar experience to me. Taking classes at the Cleveland Museum of Art was my first introduction. My mother always took us to take art classes just to have a different experience. And then at the age of 7, I was introduced to dance. Went to a friend's recital and just fell in love with it and have done it ever since.
Yeah. How impactful would you say it was for you that it was a friend's recital? As opposed to just going to a dance performance at a performing arts center?
I think because she's still my friend to this day. We've been friends since we were 7. And it was a shared experience. So after I joined the classes the next year, after watching the recital, she and I participated in so many talent shows as a duet, tap dancing, jazz dancing, whatever we could find, and that really solidified our friendship, and it's gone on now for over 40 years. So it was the arts that brought us together. She ended up leaving dance, and I never left.
I was listening to a conversation you were having. You talked about art administrators and the relationships to be developed with artists, and particularly when you identify someone that is special, not necessarily preferred, but someone who is in their own right special. Can you talk a little bit about how those relationships can and should be developed?
It's a very important relationship because one can't really grow without the other. And something that I witnessed working in arts administration at any level is when an artist has a theater or an arts administrator or a presenter behind them, their career can explode. I was able to witness many dancers 20, 25, 30 years ago start in a sort of emerging level at a certain theater on a very specific program for emerging artists, and they are world-class artists now. They're traveling across the country, and that's because very specific presenters decided that they would stick behind them and make sure that they could go on to tour, that they would get other bookings. They were collaborating with other theaters across the country and across the world, and I know that that artist that I'm thinking of is grateful to that presenter for that relationship. And it starts with relationships. Because this one presenter loved his work, she was dedicated to him, and she made sure that he had funding and that corporations were interested in him and other presenters. So that long-standing relationship really helped launch his career. It's very important to understand the artists, to understand what they need, and to believe in their vision. First of all, to figure out what their vision is, and if they are trying to formulate it, helping them formulate it, helping them shape it, giving them resources to be able to do that. And sometimes it's just a conversation and listening to them to find out exactly what do you want to accomplish? What is it that you want to say? How are you unique? And it's through a trusted relationship that the artist will share that information with you, and you'll get to know that person and help direct them on the right pathway to success. So it's a personal relationship.
Yeah. It's delicate. It takes attention and presence.
Yes.
And patience.
Artists are sensitive.
Yeah.
They're very sensitive about their work. They're sensitive about how they're presented, and they sometimes want to make sure that the right funders are behind them. They want to make sure that you believe in what it is that they're doing and that you will present their work in the manner that they want it to be presented. That's very important. So it's always listening.
How were you first introduced to Newark?
Oh, I love this story. So I was working for the Alvin Ailey Dance Foundation as a teaching artist for many years. Actually, I started there working in marketing, doing group sales for their city center season that happens every Christmas. And fell into being a teaching artist, did that for many years, and approached our director, Nasha Thomas, and told her I wanted to become more involved. And somehow she just decided that I should lead AileyCamp Newark. I don't think I had ever been to Newark at that point, maybe to NJPAC once or twice. I really didn't know. I had never attended an AileyCamp. I didn't know exactly how involved it would be, but that was my first visit to Newark. And when we were selecting campers, we took in 100 campers for the summer, 6-week summer program. I was able to tour all of the middle schools, Maple Avenue and Speedway, I think, is another school, and I was able to meet so many students and to see how on fire they were for dance and anything new. And I get a little choked up thinking about it because it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. To be with those students for 6 weeks, students from all different backgrounds, students who, some of them were homeless and had a lot of challenges, but we spent 8 hours a day with them with ballet, modern, jazz, drumming, visual arts, and took them on field trips. And at the end of 6 weeks, they performed on stage at NJPAC. And I remember talking to them backstage and telling them, you all are the first ever Ailey campers from Newark. This is the first year, and you're always going to have this. Whether you pursue the arts or not, this belongs to you, and you're the first. And I remember them just blowing up the stage. And their parents were amazed because they had never seen their children in that light. And we watched them. I mean, it was challenging. It was a challenging summer, but we knew that they loved what they were doing and that they were going to bring it out on stage, and they absolutely did. One of the greatest experiences of my life. And I never even thought I would return to Newark to actually work here, but I feel privileged. And I know Newark through the eyes of the children first, the children artists.
I want to talk about why it's important for young people to see Black art and Black artists. And I don't mean young people from Newark, and I don't just mean young Black and brown.
So we definitely have sports, we have social media, we have television, we have film, we have all of these disciplines that have a lot of money behind them. The arts sometimes do, they sometimes don't. And there's an artist inside of every child. There's an artist inside of all of us. And to have the opportunity to be able to express that and to possibly make it into a career is an opportunity that every child should have. So being able to see Black and brown artists of all colors, to see that as a possibility, I think is really important. And if that person is successful, then it gives the child something to aspire to. It's possible. If they don't see them, they don't know that it's possible. And that's why I love Newark Arts, because we put the artists first, we put them out front, we create opportunities for them to be presented, to be highlighted, and to be celebrated. So that's important. It was important for those children to be able to come and see the Ailey Company. Some of those children from AileyCamp Newark are still studying at Ailey today. And it was because of exposure. And had we not gone into the community and shown them teaching artists and given them counseling and ways to express themselves, would they know I could possibly get a scholarship to study at this world-class school, to possibly one day join this company? It's about exposure.
I think about it also through the lens of just historical documentation. You know, we often hear about hip hop is $1 trillion export. Black culture is been referred to as America's largest export. Mm-hmm. And whether it's through the passing years or present day, there's a reason why life has the sensibilities that it has today. things and the events and the people that happen and that exist. But the color to life, the flavor to life is largely a flavor that has come through the hands of black and brown people. This is like this isn't simply a conversation of mainstream versus underground or institutional versus grassroots. Like, this is everywhere. You know, everywhere you look, you can find the flavor, you can find the color. It's there. You know, and in some places more than others, but if we're talking about the globe, by and large, it's there. And if we don't see, if young people, and not as young people, don't see that there are black artists, black creators, black minds, black hands behind these things, we'll think that it's just more of the same. And we are not more of the same.
No, we're not. I want to talk a little bit about that because when I was growing up, I didn't get much black or brown history. I was pretty much taught one type of history, and I thought that that was it. When it came to black and brown history, you were told one thing, that we came from slaves. That's partially true, but then there's so much more behind that. And that informs everything that we are today, and not just black and brown people, but the entire country, because we've had an influence that has a really, really wide reach. And not knowing that history, and I think it's a lot better now in the schools. I think you have a lot of teachers and teaching artists who are very intentional about exposing children to their history. Not knowing that history and being in a country where we are not the majority means that you don't necessarily know yourself, and then you don't know what the possibilities are. If you don't know what the possibilities are, then how do you proceed? So being able, when you look at that artist on stage or walking down the street, that person has a history behind them. They have their ancestors. So we talk a lot about standing on the shoulders of our ancestors. We're also standing on the shoulders of people that are still here. And that sort of generational information about each generation, from the present to the past to the far past, where things were, we didn't have photographs, we didn't have television, that oral history, it's important that we maintain it in any culture, and that we're able to pass that on to the children so that they'll be proud. Sometimes I've worked with children from pre-K all the way up to college age as a teaching artist, and sometimes our black and brown children, I'll just give you an example, in a dance class. After you do the center warm-up, one of the important parts of the class is going across the floor. Sometimes my black and brown children, just on a simple walk, wouldn't even hold their heads up. So forget about teaching dance, let me just teach you how to walk with pride. And that comes from, if I knew that I was a descendant of a king or a queen, then I'm gonna walk that way. And it's important that children have an idea, and they can see that through the artist. The artist is sometimes unconsciously presenting all of that history in their work because either they've read about it or it's just in their blood, it's just in their veins. And I love to see that. I love it when an artist has either done research or just talked to their family about their family history and have honored their genealogy through their work. And so if children are able to see that, then we're really doing the right thing.
I want to talk a little bit about diversity.
Yes.
It's one of the buzzwords of the day, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I know you've done some of this work in your background.
Yes.
As it relates to a Newark or greater Newark, as it relates to a populace that has some very core commonalities, how do you approach diversity then within that group? It's not as much of a win in Newark to support a black artist because it's a black city, predominantly. So then it becomes a matter of, okay, then what other nuances are there to be explored and to be prioritized, as they relate to the community at large?
So, as a woman of color, I've been kind of working in DE&I my entire life on different levels. But officially starting that work in recent years at Dartmouth College was both interesting and challenging because it's a predominantly white institution. And because I was starting that work, I had to start reading about DE&I and just figure out the landscape. And it's changed quite a bit since I was a young person. There are very unclear lines of what DE&I means. And you have so many different, I mean, it used to be black and white, that was it. But our country is incredibly diverse. Right. Races have come together and intermarried and mixed and created new races. So diversity actually really is diversity in this country. Like, we really have been creating this melting pot. And that's what I see in Newark. There's so many different races here that are able to commingle, create new work, form new relationships, and that's exciting to me. Something else that I learned in my recent DE&I work is that there's room for everyone. And Dartmouth was really focused on allyship because it was a predominantly white institution, and people who weren't marginalized and black and brown were very interested in doing the work also. So you have to create a door for those people without, this is very important to me, without losing the silos for each specific group. So my approach is to find a silo for this group from this country and that country and this whatever gender you identify with. All of these groups need their own specific silo. Only through that specific, very specific silo, being able to meet together to form some sort of agenda, can you then go back into the general community, and then we really have DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion working because each group is coming to the table from their own strength. That's really my approach to DE&I. I'm not sure if it's the right one, but I, as a marginalized person myself, I know that I need the strength of my community before I can go out into the mainstream community to be my best self, my most authentic self, whatever that is. So creating the silos for each group, making sure that each group is heard, because everybody's voice is valid. Everyone is diverse in some way. There's no one specific division or dimension. But listening to each one, everyone's needs are different. We are both black, but I'm a woman, you're a man. I identify as a woman, you identify as a man. You like blue, I might like pink. That makes us diverse. And just because we look the same, it doesn't mean that we have the same viewpoint. It doesn't mean that we have the same background. Within each race, there are different socioeconomic backgrounds. And that speaks to how you perceive the world. All of that is diversity. So I think it's an exciting time for diversity because there's no definition to it. Anyone who wants to get in can absolutely find a way. But that being said, I want to make sure always in my work and my approach to DE&I want to make sure that every group, whether it's an ally or a marginalized group, whether it's a gender identifying group, that all of these voices are heard and that they have a seat at the table.
I am very curious to know what you're excited about, especially in this role and in the future for work in the arts.
How much time do you have? There's so much. When I was interviewing for the job, I had a list of things that I wanted to do, an entire vision, and in 3 or 4 days, all of that has changed. And I knew that it might, but right now, I'm telling everyone that I'm in observation mode. I am on my listening and learning tour. I have to learn the city. I have to meet the artists. I have to meet all of the stakeholders and find out exactly what it is that they want. Because I'm here to be a vessel. I'm here to do the work for you all. And if I don't have my ear to the street, then my vision means nothing. So really to carry on the amazing work that Newark Arts has done for 41 years, but also to figure out how to do more of what we're already doing. And to bring an incredible amount of attention to a city that has risen like a phoenix out of the ashes to be the city of the arts. That is my primary. If I could take every single line item that I'm looking to accomplish, it's really to bring all the national and international attention to this city, to a city that has a mayor who is a poet, who supports the arts as one of his primary goals here, and not just goals, but something that he's actually doing. He actually puts his money where his mouth is, to let the world know that it exists, and that as much as this city has been through incredible struggles, the art is rising every single day, and I want the world to know it. And that's, if I could sum up everything that I'm thinking, that really is it.